Good morning, everyone who's joining us here. We're excited to jump into this uh, webinar that we have today, where we're going to be doing a brief overview of creative problem solving and designing change, two programs that we're going to be offering through Bridge Innovate. We're really excited for everyone who is here and joining us today. My name is Collin Young. I'm a senior consultant at Bridge Innovate. So I want to briefly just cover the agenda that we have for today. We're going to talk a little bit, kind of introduce a few of kind of our philosophy when we think about design and change and how that all fits together for us. And then we're going to really dig into the business case of design thinking and change. We'll talk about some of the courses. We'll talk about the registration, and then we'll finish up with a giveaway of one seat to our creative problem solving course. So we're excited to jump in and get started. I wanted to briefly talk about here today the philosophy that we have at Bridge Innovate about the really intersection and the connection between design, change, and as well as foresight and leadership. When we think about the process of identifying a new innovative solution and taking that to scale, we see that they're integral to be connected together and driving towards the change that we want. And so as we go through in any of our process, going through to explore, design, and then act on that is really critical for us. So I'm going to jump in first when we talk about kind of the case for design and design thinking. When we consider design thinking as a methodology that helps us to be able to really create some great solutions that are first and foremost desirable for our users, but also start to unpack the technical feasibility and financial viability. When we think about any program or any solution that we want to go after with design thinking, we always want to emphasize desirability at its center and use that as an opportunity for us to really unpack the needs and the pain points of a user. From there, we can really dig into and build out and test some early ideas to unpack the feasibility and viability. So that sweet spot right there where all of those come together, that's where we see some really great innovation. I just wanted to present a couple of different quotes here and from different studies that have been done, really unpacking the business value of design. So we think about, from Fast Company about when teams iterate on their solutions, 5 or more different solutions, they're 50% more likely to launch successfully. Or Design Management Institute talking about that our focus on design yields 211% better than the S&P 500. So some really great metrics to be able to show the value of design and in the work that we do. So I want to present just a brief poll here. When we think about your organization or organizations that you work with, how would you rate your organization's use of design and creativity tools? I'm going to launch a brief poll here that will allow you all to interact and let us know how you think, really on just a scale of 1 to 5, the usage of these types of tools. So let me open that up for you, and we'll take a moment to get some responses from participants here. So we're seeing a bit of a mix here, maybe some familiarity and comfort with design tools, but also some not as familiar with the tools. So this is a great opportunity to really take that and kind of build those skills and dig into it. So the first program that I wanted to talk about here is our creative problem solving program. This program, we're actually going to be offering and running an open enrollment in the middle of September 17th. This program is utilizing a technology called Experience Innovation Aware. And so it allows us to be able to work through and unpack 6 creative habits of design thinking. And so while we go through, we'll be spending some time learning and applying design thinking, and then we'll finish our time together with an application where we facilitate and walk through how can I take this back to my organization. So it's a really great way to dig into the creative habits of design thinkers and really unpack all of the different aspects that help to help us introduce and explore creativity. I'm going to briefly touch on some of the creative habits and the areas that we would talk through in this particular creative problem solving course. You'll see over here on the slide here that there are 6 habits that we're unpacking in really 3 different phases that we focus in on. First one being inspiring new thinking, then imagining new solutions, and implement new ideas. We walk through it in a linear process, but the whole goal of this course is to emphasize that when we pull these creative habits together, it helps to lift us up for any challenge that we have when we go forward. So this first process for us as we go through is we work through and take an idea or an idea that you might have and really introduce the process of defining our challenge. So kind of flipping on its head the process of where we might start with a solution in mind, but really trying to unpack and fall in love with a problem that we have. So as I mentioned, the technology experience innovation aware allows us to be able to interface with our phone or mobile device that we have and kind of walk through the learning together. So we can be signing on to a Zoom session here, and we can actually input our ideas, our perspectives into our phones at different stages during the process here. So this is just an example here when we would go through and defining the challenge. We'd start off and you'd be thinking about who are you trying to help with your idea. Then you'd unpack what is the key benefit for that individual or user. And then it reframes your question in your idea into a question that you can go after. This is a really simple tool where we're interfacing and working with our phones to be able to help us take an idea that we have and continue to progress that into a solution. During this process as well, we talk about inspiring new thinking by identifying extreme users. So this is a tactic that is used quite a bit during the design thinking process to explore those extremes to more rapidly surface inspiration for our challenge that we're going after. During this time, we also go through and introduce some creative habits on creating options. How do we brainstorm effectively and do that in a rapid fashion? So we introduce things like brainstorming stimuli, different ways to be able to sort of jumpstart your creativity as you're walking through, and of course, emphasizing coming up with a lot of ideas in a short amount of time. We really kind of wrap up our time in this last phase of the creative problem solving course around prototyping and feedback. So one of the things that we see a lot is the opportunity to that doesn't always get explored on how do I prototype my idea quickly and use that to learn about my idea in a more rapid way that doesn't necessarily require spending lots of money or time. So we introduce a couple of different prototyping techniques, whether that's physical product prototypes or maybe a mock interface or a storyboard, and all of these different tactics help to unpack and learn more about our idea. The last piece in this process here is going through giving feedback, and so we like to introduce some habits for us as we're taking our early prototypes and provide and give feedback to those. So it really helps us to kind of pull together and walk all the way from an idea to a challenge to lots of potential solutions, and then some ideas that we could take to implement. So over here on the right, this is just a representation. Upon concluding this workshop, we have the opportunity to, as a participant, to receive a summary of your journey. So everything that you've entered into your phone throughout the process can get sent to you by email. So you can keep track of all of those activities that you've been going through throughout the session and be able to reflect back on that as you take that back into your own workplace. And we would wrap up our time where we do a little bit of a debrief, as I mentioned, and you'd have additionally a toolkit to be able to help apply some of these elements from your journey into your work here. So one of the other program that we wanted to spend and talk about is really one that explores the change methodology. So I wanted to present this question here, just really to get a sense of our audience here. Does your organization have a defined change process to really help you implement new solutions? Once you've created something and gotten your initial feedback, what's the next step, right? So that's one of the things that's really important for us as we go through is seeing how we can be able to take that forward. So I'm seeing some yes, like to some extent. So this is a great opportunity and kind of segue as we look into the importance of change. So especially in the context that we have today, this slide here really speaks to the constantly changing and shifting aspects that we experience, particularly as the marketplace is shifting. So this quote here from Jack Welch is really just hits it right on the head of we have to be able to adapt and respond to the changes that are in the marketplace. Otherwise, the end is near. So this is another statistic that we pulled together. This is coming from John Cotter, and he's written a paper here in Harvard Business Review and talking about that 70% of companies' efforts to change fail. So change is hard. And so one of the things that as we go through in our Designing Change workshop, we create an atmosphere where it's okay to make mistakes as we're unpacking and learning change. But we also see, here in this study from KPMG, the outlook for CEOs to be able to anticipate what's coming next is just incredibly critical for us to be able to explore. So that really helps us as we think about taking those ideas that we've started, that we formulated, maybe an initiative or a vision that we have that we want to implement. And through this program, this change program, we go through the process of unpacking rather than the desirable, feasible, and viable. We want to understand the aspects of being ready to engage, willing to commit, and able to do what it takes to realize the full potential of a great solution. So we see when all of those things come together, we see a really powerful change. One of the things that we spend a lot of our time during this course in particular is unpacking not just what to do, the tools or the models to be able to go about change, but also unpacking the how to be. So what is the sort of mindset and the reflexes that we need to be able to adapt and respond to a particular change situation that doesn't necessarily fit with what we'd expect. So we'll be spending our time in this Designing Change workshop unpacking both of these areas. So when we think about how does this workshop flow, what is the approach for this journey here? So this workshop we really unpack over the course of 2 modules and some pre-work here. So there's a bit more activity that's going on in this particular workshop here, but it really starts with a business case, which I'll introduce in just a minute. And you have an opportunity to, in sort of our pre-work time, to really dig into the business case. We send that to participants ahead of time to really unpack and learn and understand what's going on in their particular challenge. And then through 2 modules, we unpack the best practices of change and really map out and plan how to go about that change. And then the second module, we go through the implementation and the debrief. So how do we do this, and what happens when we start to unpack these change tactics here? So this program, like the Creative Problem Solving program, is a virtual program that we deliver entirely virtually for participants signing on here. The last thing I want to call your attention here is the organizational change framework that we introduce and reinforce during the program here. This is really a combination of the best practice and research of really over 20 years of learning to be able to figure out what is the best sort of approach that we can plug in and that is adaptable and can flex to a particular organization as well. So I mentioned the simulation and the process of going through in this case study that I referenced here. In this particular program, you'd be going through and unpacking an fictitious organization known as GlobalTech. But they're well known and they've been established in the market for quite a while. but they're experiencing a shift and a change in their market as they try and navigate from a military to a commercial market. And so as a change consultant joining this team here, we have to kind of unpack and really think about what tactics could we be exploring for this program or for this organization. So this here is just an example of the interface as we're walking through and using the change program, this simulation. This represents really quite a few things are going on in here, but one in particular is you see all the stakeholders that are involved in a change. So this is something that's critical when we think about the change framework that we have, is to understand and enlist the right people for our change. So all of these characters here, these stakeholders here, have some interaction and some interviews that we can go through and unpack. And really our goal through this entire workshop here is to move the needle from our buy-in currently at 6% to get to that 60% buy-in based on the tactics that we introduce. And what we see is as we go through and we understand and unpack, there are different perspectives from different stakeholders. So this is that pre-work element where we'd want to understand and learn more about what's the situation and how can we approach that to go forward. Once as a participant, we've had an opportunity to really unpack and see what's going on, the big components of our modules where we're working in person with teams is going to be planning and implementing a change. So there are a series of change tactics that we're presented with and really kind of understand and try and unpack to see what would be the best approach for us to be able to help this organization of GlobalTech navigate the change that they have. So within all of these different tactics here, there are costs that are associated with that. There are time commitments that are associated with each of these. So this is another element that comes in that helps us to really unpack the right change at the right time and making sure that we stay on budget and on time as we go through. So for example, if we were to go through and select the competitive and financial change tactic that we would want to use, it's only half a week and it costs about $1,000 for us to be able to go through. And if we were to implement that, we get some instant feedback about what that did and how it affected our stakeholders. So we see these notes from different individuals, different stakeholders telling us, and you'll even see that our change, our stakeholder buy-in has increased through this change tactic here. It doesn't always move up when we go through and are introducing a change tactic. Sometimes we might make a mistake, and when that happens, we can see some negative impact on our buy-in. So this allows us to really go through and see and then learn and adapt as we go through to apply those change tactics. Upon completion, we get an opportunity to really get kind of this debrief and really explore the change tactics that we did and if the timing was really right as we go through and how that affected the different stakeholders throughout this process here. So we've had a chance to talk about these two different programs, but as we kind of come to the close in our time together and we kind of unpack what should I expect as a participant. So each of these programs is really designed to rapidly introduce a method, a process, whether that's design thinking or change management, and allow participants to really be exposed to a learning process, to apply that in a safe, comfortable fashion, but to be able to see how then they can take that back to their own organization. So upon completion of both of these, there's a toolkit that helps to carry that forward and help you support you in your own efforts and your own change that you're going through as a participant. So, that brings me to this point here of how do I join? What's next for me as a participant wanting to sign up for one of these programs here? So we have our creative problem solving and the tools that we're using for this particular program. We'll be using Zoom to be able to facilitate our virtual meetings and the breakouts that we need for that program. Additionally, you would need some sort of device that connects to the internet, whether that's a smartphone or a tablet. And as I mentioned, we're using the Experience Innovation Aware Simulation. All three of these technologies and tools help come together to help us deliver on that virtual program. We have an open enrollment program that is set to occur on September 17th from 9 a.m. Eastern Time to about 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So there's opportunity to go to our website to be able to take a look at that and register for that program. The other program we've been talking about, Designing Change, also will be using Zoom to support our virtual meetings where we're working in teams to try and tackle and address this challenge. We'll be using Experience Change Simulation, which helps us to be able to input, as I was showing you, our tactics and see what happens and see that dynamic nature of an organization. The other tool that we use to be able to help us, particularly in the planning and the mapping of our tactics that we have, is the virtual collaboration platform Mural. And so that allows us to be able to see those tactics, move them around, and figure out what type of order do we really want to introduce for this program or for our change that we're going through. For our Designing Change program, to join or get started in this, we just ask you to contact us about scheduling a session for your team. So it allows you to reach out to us and learn more about that. Particularly upon completion, but if you want to take it a step further, you're excited about learning about design or change management, but you really want to build that extra skill or extra capability within your organization or for you as an individual, we have opportunities to get certified to be able to really take that extra step into this program. So for the creative problem solving, certification allows you to be able to lead this workshop that we've been talking about and run the simulation, the technology that helps us to be able to support this program here. So as a facilitator, you'll be able to teach others to mobilize creative habits with a full set of planning tools and templates. For Designing Change, the certification is in Experience Change Workshop. So it allows you to be able to teach others about how to mobilize change with those tools as well. So both of those certifications are completed virtually and they are self-paced. So if you are interested in completing either one of those certifications, you can also reach out to me by email to be able to complete that certification. All right. So it looks like we don't have any questions, but we do have a couple of more webinars that are coming up that we're really excited about sharing with you all. Coming up just next week, we're going to be hearing from Charles Thomason. He's going to talk about how to get unstuck, to unlock and activate the wisdom of others. And we have a few more in here, from high school senior entrepreneurs to prosperity playbooks, some really great webinars to be able to sign in and join. We're excited to hear from each of our special guests who are going to be sharing a bit about their experience and their journey through each of these. So with that, I just want to say thank you for everyone who's joined in, and for those who have registered who will be watching this webinar later. We're glad you were able to join us. We hope you have a great rest of your day.